You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Happy Hump Day, folks. Yes, this is the Capitalist Corner. I'm your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair, Mr. Michael Liebowitz, who's also helming this amazing station we call the Rational Alternative. I hope you had a good 24 hours off, folks. I hope you checked your premises. I hope you're coming into this conversation primed and ready to kick some ass, because we're going to talk about some current events after, of course, Michael tells us what's going on with the Rational Alternative. Also, I gotta dig your merch there, Michael. For anybody out there who wants some of this merch, where can they get this? Because Principled Motherfucker is an awesome cap. I think everybody should have.
I think it's on the website. This was a gift. I didn't buy it myself. Persephone sent it to me for my birthday, along with another one that says "fuck bullies." So two great hats from Persephone. I'm gonna have to take it off in a minute because it's hot, right? But I wanted to sport it. I want to get it done. So what's going on the Rational Alternative right now on the Michael Liebowitz Show? I just released a debate I did with physicist Andrei Grekov on free will. I think that's a good one. People should check that out. Of course, we're here every weekday, noon Eastern time, 9 Pacific, doing the Capitalist Corner. Weekend stuff with Megan, membership stuff, a lot of stuff coming down the pike. I think we're rocking and rolling. But I got to tell you, let me first take this hat off. Wait a minute,
while you're doing that, I want to ask Ian. Ian, are you a Canadian? Because that word "toque" is specifically Canadian. I learned it from my wife, who's Canadian, and I just want to see if we're making friends and influencing people in Canada. That's awesome. We need more capitalists in Canada. Thank you, Nicole Hingle, for that $5 super chat. I can't stay long. Not feeling well. That's not good.
Sorry, Nicole. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, hang in there, kid.
So I'm fit to be effing tied, Mark.
You're steamed?
I'm pissed. I'm really pissed off. So let me, the regret on Rand Paul and the misrepresented COVID vaccine study are kind of connected. Well, not kind of, they very are. So let me scroll down and just so we can get some stuff here. So remember this, the CIA, the FBI, and the Department of Energy, home to some of our best government scientists, have all independently concluded this pandemic likely originated in a lab. That's not my opinion. That's the opinion of our own intelligence and scientific community. Okay, let me state for the record, I don't know where COVID came from, but I also know that it's not the way Rand Paul presents it, which more and more I'm learning that Rand Paul is just your run-of-the-mill politician. He saw the freedom angle as his lane, and now he's discovered the new lane of this COVID shit, right? So most epidemiologists and virologists have the opposite conclusion, that it likely came from zoonotical, or I think that's how you pronounce it, from animals to humans.
Zoonotical.
I think it's zoonotical, because if it's zoo, then you would require a third O. But that's neither here nor there. Let's not get distracted. So it's also not like all these intelligence agencies are like, yes, it came from a lab. They're like, well, with moderate certainty, we can say
moderate.
Yes,
it was moderate was the high grade of it.
Yes, or low certainty, and it was only a couple agencies, so it's not our our agencies that are all coming to these conclusions and our scientists. So I got to make sure that I find the right one, because this shit has me peeved. Yes, Rand Paul. In private, Dr. Anthony Fauci was concerned about potential miscarriage risks in pregnant women when they received the COVID booster. In public, he said pregnant women had nothing to worry about when getting it. Once again, Anthony Fauci was saying one thing in public and something different in private. He was willing to put women and their unborn children at risk instead of admitting he was wrong about the vaccines that he tried guilting Americans into taking. So this is just from Rand Paul. Right? This is what comes from him. There's also this study out there or rather a miscited study claiming that it was an 82% chance of having a miscarriage if you took the COVID vaccine in the first trimester. That's also BS. And we'll get to why, but I just want to go through what people are saying. Prominent freaking people. Okay, Senator Mike Lee for Fauci and other Marxists. I don't know of any evidence at all, none, zero, that says Anthony Fauci is a Marxist. None. But what does Mike Lee care? He can get popular and get clicks and everything else by saying stupid shit like this. He says, for Fauci and other Marxists, was the likelihood of widespread fetal demise a feature or a bug? Then he says, can you hear that sound of personal injury lawyers preparing lawsuits against Fauci and Walensky? Now, I have the text that they're referring to. We're going to go through those later, but I just want to go through this stuff first. Also from Mike Lee, some of you may die, but that is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Lord Anthony Fauci, Farcute. Okay. Journalists. Piers Morgan, this is appalling, talking about Fauci. No wonder he took the fifth. Hold on here. Megyn Kelly, villain, criminal, sociopath. Shame on Anthony Fauci.
Can we put journalists in quotation marks?
Sure.
Please, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Meghan McCain. Meghan McCain. This is not hyperbole. Handcuff, perp walk, and put Fauci in jail cell for the rest of his life. Put Fauci in jail. I am a woman who was pregnant and had a miscarriage during COVID. Her husband, Benjamin Domenech. I'm not going to say what I think, but you know what I think. Oh, Coach Tommy Tuberville, senator. Fauci knew the COVID vaccine had an 81% miscarriage rate and covered it up. Criminal. Okay. Let's explain a little something here of what they're talking about. There was a study where pregnant women were administered the vaccine. Some were administered it in the first trimester, some later on. It was 827 women, I believe, in total, right? So it's true. I just want to get the exact numbers, Mark. So tell a quick story.
It was something like 700 were administered the vaccine in the third trimester. The remaining 127 were administered it earlier on. And they decided to eliminate the 700 and count the 127, which led to a denominator error, I think, is what it's called.
Yes.
So that the numbers of miscarriages did not, in fact, represent any real number.
So let me just put this out there. So the 82% figure is a statistical error, right? Where it comes from, a 2021 New England Journal of Medicine study tracked 827 pregnant women who'd completed a pregnancy after COVID vaccination. It found a 12.6% pregnancy loss rate, which was in line with expected background rate of miscarriages in the general population. Right? So it's in line with it. So they're claiming 82%. So the way that they do that is they take 127 people who received the vaccine in the first two trimesters, and they say 104 of them had miscarriages. Okay. So there's people who will say, okay, but still 104 out of the 127 had miscarriages. Not so fast. Because what actually occurs is they're only counting people who had completed pregnancies. So if you took the COVID vaccine in the first trimester, right, and 104 of them have miscarriages, there's still people out there who have not have completed pregnancies. So they're not being factored in yet. You're factoring in completed, meaning miscarried. It's a screwed up way to put it, but it's a completed pregnancy, or those that survived were premature early births. So they're taking that number in all these prominent influencers, and there's a lot more out there, in saying that this shows that the COVID vaccine caused miscarriages. No, it did not. That's a goddamn lie, and a big one. And these people, look, some of them are just dumb, granted. But Rand Paul is a doctor. Mike Lee is a prominent attorney outside of becoming a senator. Ron Johnson is pushing this stuff. They've got to know the truth. And if they don't, then they're goddamn idiots. Okay, so let me get rid of all of this stuff here.
Michael,
and you can talk a little bit. You've read the same stuff.
It just goes to show you that Mark Twain was right. A lie will travel halfway across the world before the truth is putting its shoes on.
All right, so now let me just do this. I want you to tell a story, Mark. Talk about this a little bit from what you've seen.
So we got a comment up here that says usually, a pregnancy inherently involves immunocompromise. That's true. If somebody, according to these articles and some of the things that they were discussing in their chats, if a woman gets a fever, that could compromise the pregnancy, and that could happen for any reason, Michael, not just because of the vaccine, but for any reason. Go ahead. It looks like you got the conversation up.
Well, that's because it puts it up automatically right when I bring it. Okay, let me see here. So let's do this. This is the entire text thread. So let me go back here. This is how it starts. Okay, no, it's not. See, this is the problem, is these things.
I mean, we could just sum up the whole text.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to sum anything up because I want people to understand exactly what was said here. I think it's very, very important what was said. Right? Okay. Slow this down.
Ian Gilmore says, as you're trying to sort that out, I'll read some of these comments. To me, this is like the election fraud stuff I brought up before. Can we say these people are dishonest because they should know better?
Okay, so Fauci says, this is the first thing. He says, there are no data or theoretical reasons to believe that vaccinating early versus late in pregnancy would be preferred, yet some people, even female health... I don't know what's happening here. Did you hit something? Okay.
I just muted my microphone.
Okay, that's probably screwed things up. Some people, even female healthcare professionals, feel concerned about injecting a genetic vaccine very early in pregnancy. There is this misperception out there that we need to deal with the mRNA somehow can get into your genes. When the misperception gets extended to an early developing fetus, the anxiety heightens. So that's the first thing he says now. Okay. I don't know what, something's wrong and it's pissing me off. Okay, then he says, I asked around a bit more and another issue came up that you need to be aware of. Since many people have significant cytokines, storm, and fever after the second dose, this theoretically... Hold on.
Baby.
This theoretically could be associated with miscarriages in the first trimester. And then Dr. Murthy says, that's what my sense was as well, Tony, which is why I was, okay, that's something different. Hold on. Asked more about it. I would say, Tony Fauci says, I would say that in any vaccine in which data are lacking in pregnant women, one must weigh the potential risks against the benefits. COVID-19 can be a serious disease, especially in pregnancy. In the vaccine trials, pregnant women were not allowed, but following the EUA, a large number, more than 10,000 pregnant women have been vaccinated. No issues have arisen. The FDA and the ACIP and the ACOG are all permissive for pregnant women to have a choice. Animal tox studies did not raise any red flags. Okay, this I can't read because it's too small. The bottom line is what is happening here is professionals are having a discussion. And Fauci says that theoretically there's this possibility. He's running it by them. Based on that, all these folks are out there saying Fauci knew in private that this had a risk and he let it go out there anyway. He says it's a theoretical possibility that this is a risk. Not it's a risk, not that there's data showing there's a risk, none of that. And yet Meghan McCain is saying he needs to be perp walked and put in jail. Megyn Kelly saying he's a sociopath. Senator Mike Lee is calling him a Marxist and saying he's subject to liability now. Nowhere does he ever say in these private chats, yes, this is dangerous for pregnant women to get this. Yes, it will lead to miscarriages. He speculates that it's a theoretical possibility of this, and he just wants to make them aware of it. No data ever showed that, right? The fact that we're at a state in this country where people are blatantly taking this guy's words out of context, where you have other people that are blatantly or unintentionally or whatever misrepresenting what a study says, and this stuff is viral like you wouldn't believe across X. It is so disgusting, Mark.
Oh, it's absolutely disgusting because he's being victimized at this point because he was the face of COVID, and also he seems to be in the opposition camp. He seemed to not really align himself with the MAGA movement, and so now they're making him pay for it, Michael. Even though I don't know that Rand Paul necessarily aligns himself with that. That seems to be the motivation behind this. The question is, though, Michael, how much transparency should there have been? Even though he's speculating in a private chat that there is this something that needs to be looked at, should he have informed the American people that he was speculating privately with respect to this, or should he have just kept the line that was the published evidence at the time? He was basically saying in public what was the published evidence at the time.
Okay, here's the problem. I think a legitimate debate can be had that he should have been more transparent about his concerns. That's a legitimate debate, right? I'm not taking anything away from people who say, look, he should have been more forthcoming. But saying he should be more forthcoming about his private speculations is not the same thing as saying this guy's a sociopath who knew that women were going to lose their babies. Different thing.
Because he didn't know that. He didn't know any of that. He was privately speculating. And then you think about this, Michael, as it with his job as a public official who's the face of this disease and the face of what to do in this disease. How much responsibility does he have to air every thought or feeling that he has with respect to the vaccinations, especially if that could cause panic? When you're talking about, the people have a right to know, so they have informed consent, that's true. But if this is just a private speculation and all the evidence that's out there is pointing to, is suggesting that it's just a speculation, does he have a responsibility to air that? I don't know.
No. And so that's where I was going to go. This isn't the same thing as what we talked about the other day, where we don't know what's going to happen in the future. If you've got medical professionals going out there and putting forth every hypothetical that could possibly occur, no matter how far-fetched, and there's no evidence for it, I don't even know how we could function at that point. I mean, this wasn't like he said, he said it's theoretically possible, so we should, just keep an eye on it. They want to take into consideration every possibility. I don't think they should share every possibility. I think I think a blanket listen, this is all in the sort of preliminary stages. Everything we're looking at, all the data seems correct, but, talk to your doctor, consult with your doctor, that sort of thing, I think would have been fine.
Michael, do you think what's causing a lot of the controversy is that they compelled so many people to take the vaccine, that the suggestion now is if there was any doubt in your mind, you're depriving people of informed consent, and that in itself is wrong. I mean, we could talk about the inappropriateness of compulsory vaccination, right? I don't think either of us would go for that. But that's what they did. I mean, thousands of people lost their jobs in the military because they wouldn't take the vaccine. I know I was forced to take the vaccine. If I wanted to stay employed in Hollywood, I had to take the vaccine to stay on my show.
Okay, hold on though. See, we're conflating some things here. We're
I'm
conflating some things here.
I'm asking if that is what is causing all
I get it, but I just want to state something. If you're an actor and your employer tells you if you want to work, you have to get the vaccine, then
you still have a choice.
Right. And not only that, but this is a private employer. That's totally different. Now, if you work for the government, it's a bit different because now it's a government thing. Or if the government is forcing private citizens, or as was talked about, but I don't think ever occurred. Again, I was incarcerated at the time, and so I'm going by memory from the news. They talked about sort of vaccine passports where you'd have to have a vaccine to go, here or there. So
yeah, I had that.
Right. So that would be, if it's government mandated, a serious thing, and they certainly contemplated it. I definitely think that lockdowns, mixed messaging on masks, Fauci admitting he was dishonest, helps feed that, right? But I think there's a larger point here that is bigger than just, yes, we can blame, it's all on the administrations, Trump's administration, Biden's, and it's all on Fauci. There is a thirst in society for this type of shit, right? To find an enemy. They've turned Dr. Fauci into the ultimate evil.
He's a scapegoat now.
Right. He is the ultimate evil. He's responsible for everything that happened. Everything he did was wrong. All he did was lie. They're fabricating statistics. A woman once told me, Mark, and this woman, by the way, sits on a town council somewhere. She said to me, "Did you take the vax?" I said, "Yeah." She says, I really think they've injected people with something so that they can turn it on and just kill people whenever they want. You're out of your effing mind, lady.
Unbelievable.
You're out of your mind, right? But people, there's so much bullshit. Now, Ian said something a few spots back. He said 6 months from now, the 82% miscarriage number will be treated like established truth by a large number on the right.
That's true.
6 months from now, this morning.
Yes,
this morning.
But it might not have circulated throughout the MAGA movement right now. So it
circulated. No, it's circulated. No, it's circulated.
Well, Michael, so let's be clear though. There has now been meta-analysis of whether or not this vaccine caused premature miscarriages in women, and the meta-analysis this is an analysis of hundreds of thousands of pregnant women who have taken this vaccine in the first trimester. The meta-analysis shows absolutely no evidence that this vaccine caused miscarriages. Now that's the truth. Now anybody who wants to go with the truth has to immediately stop persecuting Fauci for this particular issue. Now that's not to say other issues aren't real and substantive in some way, but certainly this one is not. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, Ian Gilmore put a good comment. I think on a reel I put out there the other day, and he said he would give anything just to have a real breakdown of Fauci, right? Of the truth, with no hyperbole, nothing. And this is kind of the problem with this stuff, right? In order to do that would take a tremendous amount of time and effort. Right? Because you can't go by memory. You have to go back and watch his statements, read what he wrote, read what was being said at the time, read the various studies, be able to actually assess the studies. That's a lot of damn work, right? Uh-huh. And I'm just sitting here thinking, should I do that? But that would take away from so much other stuff. And for what ultimately? Because in the end, you're not going to...
But Michael, even not doing a completely deep dive into this, it's not hard to see that there's really no correlation. This is really hyperbole.
So, right. This is like a book project for someone. But even then, it doesn't matter. So I put out a post on Facebook this morning and on X, Mark. Let me just lay out for you my daily sources of information. And these are not all inclusive because I go other places as well. 1440, Dispatch, Axios, Epic Times, right? So those are 4. AP, Reason, Independent Institute, American Institute of Economic Research, and I'm probably missing some because it's off the, the Free Press. I also, Fox, Newsmax, also included in there. Of course, I go to Jacobin and I'll chase down articles other places. Also, Facebook and X, I see what's going on there every day. And, of course, the LLMs I use. It doesn't matter what I cite. Somebody tells me, oh, you're going to believe those folks? It doesn't matter. And that's the epistemological problem that scares me, and that's where we are right now. Right? How do you there's to circumvent that? I mean, Christopher Smith says, what these buggers did to us, man, was he the head doctor advising? Okay, he was the head doctor advising. Nobody's defending Fauci. But there's a big difference from saying there shouldn't have been mask mandates and there should not have been lockdowns, and Fauci intentionally vaccinated pregnant women knowing 82% were going to have miscarriages.
Yeah, they're calling him a murderer as opposed to a man who may have committed some errors in his policy. And Christopher, if he's guilty of some of these things, which I think he likely is, as the face of what to do in the pandemic, then many governors as well are responsible. State governors that shut down entire economies. Gavin Newsom is responsible because that hyperbole, that hysterical reaction is what has caused the ripple effect, Michael, in economics today. I mean, our economy has still not recovered from that year-long shutdown.
Mark, one of the strangest dynamics involved here, right? One of the most bizarre dynamics is Trump empowered Fauci. Trump listened to Fauci. Trump mocked and threatened states and countries that wouldn't lock down.
Yes.
Right? Trump's the one. And I think it was good. Look, I'm not upset about Operation Warp Speed. I'd get rid of all that FDA approval crap right now.
Right.
Right. But if you're saying you hate the vax and the vax is bad, but the same people who want to kill Fauci, how come Rand Paul's not out there every day saying Trump gave us this, Trump did this, Trump's the one that empowered Fauci, Trump's government was the one who pressured states to lock down? Because he doesn't want to get on the bad side of Trump, right? Why isn't he out there? Why did he give Trump a pass? Right, but he doesn't want to get further. So, he gives Trump a pass on a war that he says is unconstitutional. That's okay. He's turned on the Constitution in regard to birthright citizenship because he doesn't want to go against Trump. It's similar to all the people bitching about inflation, right? But don't want to go after Trump for tariffs. Don't want to go after Trump for jawboning the Fed into lowering interest rates. Don't want to go after Trump for jawboning the Saudis and the Russians into cutting oil production because he didn't want the price to drop. No. Let's not. Trump had we're just going to blame Biden. It's like it's insane the degree to which people go to protect him. Now, this is interesting. So Bonnie, and I don't know anything about Amish Adalja at all. Nothing. I don't know if he's right. I don't know if he's wrong. I haven't followed him, anything. But I know that he's become a boogeyman.
Sure. Because he was a voice of reason, Michael. Because
but here's the thing: those objectivists who are Trumpicans, they say Amish Adalja was horrible during COVID. So I don't like preaching to the choir. Not that I don't like talking with like-minded people, or I don't want people who agree to listen to the show, but ultimately I want to be able to persuade people. The problem is, when everybody gets to ignore evidence they don't like by saying, well, that's that. I'm going here. Oh, you asked an LLM? Oh, well, of course they're going to say what the left wants you to say. This is really responses I've gotten, right? I don't know how to get past that tripwire, right? I don't know how to get past that because people want to believe what they want. So, I do what I can. I debate socialists. I've debated Trump supporters. I do what I can, but it's a tough road to haul, man.
Yeah, Michael, it's sort of like Thomas Paine said, right? Reasoning with someone who doesn't accept reason is like administering first aid to the dead.
Right.
What you hope in these conversations is that somebody out there in the ether is actually listening, who still has a mind and isn't trying to protect, their prejudices. That's the person you're trying to influence in these sometimes rather frustrating conversations. And you're right. The MAGA folks conveniently forget. They push all the blame for inflation on Biden, but it was Trump who put
Right.
$6 trillion into
Right.
the world, folks. It was Trump who did that. Yes, the Operation Warp Speed was a good thing, but all his other policies, which governors of other states followed, were awful, and they did it at his urging. Don't forget that, folks.
Christopher Smith says they're all guilty. By the way, you're watching the Capitalist Corner on the Rational Alternative YouTube channel. If you're joining us from X or joining us from Twitch, please subscribe to the Rational Alternative on YouTube. We'd greatly appreciate it. I do have a question from Christopher Smith for Christopher Smith. He says they're all guilty of what? I want to know, Christopher. I might agree. I don't know. I don't know what you're going to say. But I specifically want you to tell me what Anthony Fauci is guilty of. That's what I want to know. Not just for Christopher, for abolish the FDA. I want to know from everybody in the audience who thinks that Anthony Fauci is guilty, and I think he's guilty of some things, right? But I want to know, what does everybody say he's guilty of? But first, to Christopher Smith. What about the MyPillow guy? Did you see the story about the MyPillow guy, Mark?
I did, and I have to say that I'm glad he lost in his bid in Minnesota, because Lindell has turned out to be quite an insane MAGA guy. I'm probably being redundant there, Michael, because so many of them seem to be off the reservation. But this guy launched major investigations on behalf of Trump, trying to reinforce the narrative coming out of MAGA.
Do you know what he's saying now, today?
Let's hear it.
All right. This is from The Hill, but I've seen it elsewhere. Just The Hill is the first one that came up. MyPillow founder Mike Lindell is refusing to concede in Minnesota's Republican gubernatorial primary.
Oh, my Lord.
Alleging irregularities in the vote totals. The businessman, who's backed by President Trump, lost by 11 points. When asked by a reporter on his live network, Lindell TV, about whether he would concede the race, he said, "Why would I listen to the AP? There's 5,000 votes left to count. I'm down by 18,000 now. I'm not going to give up this race until the votes counted. That's nonsense." So here's the thing. Okay, so
wait, before you go on, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he make a famous bet with somebody with respect to the voting machines and the errors within the voting machines? He bet something like $5 million.
Did he?
I think, and he lost. He lost. Like, somebody proved that his hypothesis with respect to the voter fraud was actually wrong. And I don't think he paid the guy the $5 million he offered. Can somebody clarify exactly what that was? Because I don't remember
know about
he made
that.
a bet.
But look, the guy's a nut. And the only reason we have any, like, this guy's risen to prominence behind his stupid commercials for his stupid pillow is because he catered to Trump, and Trump likes that. He came out and said he has evidence that the vote was rigged against Trump. So therefore, he gets prominence within that movement. Okay, so hold on. I want to just read Christopher Smith here. He says he promoted hysteria in lockdowns. That's what he says. He said COVID was an egregious overreach by government, and a lot of people are culpable. Okay, that's
true.
I agree with that, Christopher. The problem is, and I don't want to criticize you. I'm not like trying to pick a fight with you, because I happen to agree with that. But we're talking about something so much worse. We're talking about politicians, influencers, and ex-reporters like Katie Pavlich, for instance, Meghan McCain, her husband Ben Domenech, some of whom I think believe it, some who don't. They're basically saying that this guy intentionally advocated for something he knew was going to kill their children, their unborn children, their fetuses. So when you're making claims like that, and then you come in and say he is guilty, just put it in context. Yes, he advocated horrible policies, which, by the way, he had no power to implement. Right? So, yeah, he was wrong for that. I agree. But that does not make him Joseph Mengele, which a lot of people are claiming he is.
That's true, Michael. And where do you think this goes from here?
I think it's going to become part of the lore, as Ian said, that it's now established fact. Like, it's established fact to them that the election was stolen, that COVID vaccines cause all kinds of problems. Now they're up in arms about this new flu vaccine, an mRNA flu vaccine. The people on the right, they're very adamant how horrible that is. I don't know anything about it. I can't speak on it one way or another, but I'm just saying that's their new thing. I can't tell you how many posts I've seen that said the conspiracy theorists were right all along. Why? Because the other conspiracy dummies told you that, right? That's why you were right. Or they say, oh, I'll bet you wish you didn't take the vaccine now. No, actually, I'm fine with it. I don't really give a shit. I'm okay. I took it in a context where it was in my interest to do so. It has caused me zero harm at all. The only harm I ever got from it was my shoulder hurt. You know what I mean? So, but they repeat that stuff. We know the election was stolen. All right. So it all just becomes part of, what you believe.
They can't really point to evidence, Michael. It's just a suspicion, and it's confirmed in the media circles that they hang out in, but they can't get specific. I just want to talk about this real quickly. This is Mike Lindell's MyPillow founder offered $5 million prize to anyone who could prove that certain data he presented did not relate to the 2020 U.S. presidential election. He made the offer in connection with a cyber symposium he held in South Dakota, where he claimed the data showed Chinese interference in the election. Computer forensics expert Robert Zeidman reviewed the material, concluded it was unrelated to the 2020 election, describing it in part as a random or non-election data, and claimed the prize. An arbitration panel ruled in Zeidman's favor in 2023, ordering payment of the $5 million. A federal judge later upheld the decision in 2024. I don't know if he's paid it, but he's legally obligated to at this point, which I'm sorry, Michael, I'm laughing. It is funny.
He's a nut. He's clearly nuts, right? But he's gained prominence and he's gained influence, and that's the way it goes. And you go on X and there's all these folks with 1 million plus followers who are promoting this, promoting that the idea that vaccines were killing, causing miscarriages. If I have to see vaccine injury one more time in my life about how harmful vaccines are, and how many people that know not a goddamn thing about the subject are experts on it. It's just, we're in a real epistemological crisis in this country. I mean, in my view, it's serious. It's definitely exacerbated by social media because, 30 years ago, some dumbass, hanging out with his dumbass friends puts this shit out there. And what does it do? Spreads around the neighborhood. Now he can post this and 5 million views.
Yeah. Mike Lindell, this is troubling. This is what Ian says, got 33% of the Republican primary voters. That sounds about the MAGA base, Michael, don't you think? Even though he's clearly an insane person, that's about the MAGA base. Would you agree with that, Ian? It sounds about right. About a third of the Republicans are completely given themselves over to the insanity of MAGAism. You want to talk a little bit about what happened in Madison, Wisconsin? Or do you want to keep on this for a bit?
But just what I told you today. Okay. This woman comes in. It's a waste of time to ask AI to parrot you the official story, which I never said I do. Right. Ask it for its own analysis, which of course is what I always do. But, so whatever. I get that. I can't tell you how many times I'll get that where I'll post something and somebody responds to something I didn't say based on what's already in their head about their preconceived beliefs. It's so what's the word I'm looking for? Discomforting, maybe, or discouraging to me. So, yeah. So in, where was it now? Wisconsin.
Uh-huh.
In
Madison,
Wisconsin,
Wisconsin.
there was a race, and do you have the names in front of you? Because I don't currently have
Yeah,
them in front of me.
it was a Democratic Socialist member in this primary. Her name was Francesca Hong. She was going up against David Crowley. And of course, the establishment Democrats were supporting Crowley, while the Democratic Socialists were supporting Hong. And the preliminary polls, Michael, had her winning by a very, very
Huge,
wide
right?
margin.
So,
But
yeah.
she ended up losing
Right.
by
So
a small margin, but nonetheless,
very small. So I don't know. I mean, this is being promoted as a big establishment win. I don't know that it is that. You're talking about a
no.
swing state where an avowed socialist came within a hair's breadth of winning the nomination for the Democratic Party. But one thing I will say, that it does seem that Democrats are pushing back against this. There were mainstream Republicans who pushed back against Trump in the middle and then fell in line. Hopefully the Democrats don't do that. I'm not encouraged because they're politicians, and that's what politicians ultimately do, is they fall in line. And I think that's likely to happen. I hope that I'm wrong.
This is exactly the problem Washington talked about when he feared the rise of political parties, Michael. He knew that there would be partisans who would be more interested in preserving the party than acting in the interests of the American people. And that's precisely what we have now. That's what Hassan Piker, who's worshipped by the Democratic Socialists of America, is saying. He's saying people should fall in line. Once somebody's elected, stop the bickering, stop the infighting, get behind the person, right? Of course, that serves him because they're Democratic Socialists who have won primaries, 7 primaries across the country right now. But it's likely that they'll do that. That seems to be the line of reasoning within the tribes, Michael, is circle the wagons around who you've selected, regardless of how bad they are. And Francesca Hahn was bad.
Real bad.
She's bad.
Like, did you see the things that she was calling for back in 2020?
Yeah, she wanted to abolish the police, right? I mean, she wanted to abolish the police. It wasn't just defund. It was
and
the
prisons.
Democratic Social and prisons, guys.
And Thanksgiving.
And Thanksgiving, right, because she didn't want to celebrate a colonialism
colonialist holiday, yeah.
But Michael, what's so disgusting about that is she said, now it's one of my favorite holidays. Well, how did you have that turnaround so
did you
fast? Really have that turnaround?
So fast. And then you've got Bernie Sanders refused to support her, saying, well, I really don't know her. Yeah, that's your reasoning, Bernie. And now you have what's her name there? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's out there saying woke one was just nuts. They're really trying to walk away from that stuff as if it never happened, as if they never said it.
But Michael, her reasoning. Thank you, Robert Nasser for that one.
Nasser,
I corrected it for that $1.99 super sticker, my friend. Yeah, you know what she's saying, Michael, is I said what needed to be said at the time. How do you announce to everybody that you're just a whim-worshipping, pragmatic person who might be infected by any intellectual virus that comes your way?
Yeah.
To me, that's disqualifying that you say what needed to be said at the time because you're a demagogue.
Right. I mean, so let me just look at something. In the last few years, let's just examine some of the things that we've had occur, right? We had COVID lockdowns. We did have some vaccine mandates, COVID lockdowns, mask mandates, that sort of thing. We had that. We had the idea that men can literally become women, right? And that women can literally become men. We had the whole new language that's come up, this anti-racism stuff, cisgender, all that.
Where is Abram X Kendi now, by the way, the huge anti-racist guy and D'Angelo? Where are these people now? They made millions of dollars promoting this bullshit.
Right.
And now we're
right. So you had the critical race theory, that stuff was there. The whole woke thing. Then we've got, the election was stolen. Vaccines are killing people. Vaccines are causing autism. We've got the Republican Party, advocating for tariffs. We've got this post-liberal right with J.D. Vance that's coming on. The Republicans really don't even argue for capitalism anymore. They used to at least give lip service to it. We've got actual socialists getting elected. We're not in good shape. We are starving. Those of us...
But here's the good news, Michael. I mean, for decades, the Republicans have postured as the party of the Constitution, as the party more or less of liberty and individualism and of capitalism. But now the cat is out of the bag, man. The cat is out of the bag. There's no pretense anymore. Guys like J.D. Vance want to institute socialism without calling it socialism. They even want to, and this is according to Nikos Sotirakopoulos. I did not read Vance's book, but he's so upset by the lack of church participation that he is considering mandating that businesses and businesses be closed on Sunday and that people be prohibited by the government from working on Sundays, Michael, to try to encourage church attendance. Oh my God.
So it's interesting you brought up Nikos, because he and I did a very, very good interview the other day about the liberty movement, about how to spread liberty and everything else. Unfortunately, I'm a complete dummy because I accidentally deleted it this morning, and there's
out of here.
There's no way to retrieve it.
Are you serious?
I am. Fortunately, Nikos is incredibly benevolent, because when I told him about my stupid error, he said, "No worries, we can record it again."
Nice.
So we will do it again. Jason Adams, thank you,
sir.
for the $1.99. But ultimately, that's what we're here for. That's what we can do. We can spread an optimistic view of liberty. We can, just keep pressing on, keep pushing forward, making these arguments. We're going to do it every day on this show, except for when I go to Soho, and I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. But except for when I go to Soho and during the convention, which I'm looking forward to. Why don't you tell them about the convention, Mark? Make yourself useful with that great hair.
So, folks, yes, September 19th and 20th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, we're going to be having our first national convention for the American Capitalist Party. This is a huge event. I mean, it's huge because nobody is fooled anymore, at least nobody with a brain, that either side has your interests in mind. They're circling the wagons around their own tribes to try to protect their party. And neither party is now advocating for individual rights, liberty, or capitalism anymore. They are avowedly and openly and explicitly anti-capitalist. So come to this event so you can help form the policies that we will be taking to state legislatures and that we will take to the federal government to start changing this argument, to seriously clear the swamp, folks. The thing that President Trump was supposedly elected to do, and people thought he was going to do as the outsider, he's turned out to be one of the biggest insiders on the planet.
It's funny. I'm really interested to get Jim Valiant's take on what I'm about to say. So Jason Adams said, "Can I be Madison?" And I think that spot's taken, and I'm going to tell you why. With Jefferson and Madison, Jefferson was the greater mind. He was the more radical of the two, but he was also prone to flights. Let's say fancy, like his idea that the government should be abolished every 20 years and completely rebuilt. I think that Jim Valiant and I are Jefferson and Madison. I think Jim is clearly smarter, clearly more educated, but I think Jim is prone to some hyperbolic flights of fancy at times, and I'm tasked with reining him in, as Madison did for Jefferson. What I'm trying to figure out is where Mark fits into this equation.
I'm content to be Mason.
George Mason?
Sure.
Opposing the Constitution.
Well, opposing it the way it was, of course. Yeah.
All right. Okay, I'll go for that. That's cool. That's cool. So yesterday, what, you want to read something?
Wait, listen. I know, deputy assistant intern to Madison. Hey, come on, Jason.
You could do better than that, man. You could be James Monroe. Just be happy we're not assigning you to be Hamilton.
Era of good feeling. Yeah, Hamilton. No, but era of good feelings. I'm all right with that. I'm all right with Monroe. No, charismatic, likely to duel someone. Well, there you go. I am likely to duel someone. But
that definitely is Mark. Yes, Mark is more likely to. In high school, I think that's what they actually wrote in his yearbook.
Most likely to duel someone.
Yeah, most likely to duel someone.
I'm a peaceful guy. I've always been peaceful.
Yeah, and that hair is phenomenal.
Well, thank you. I'm glad.
Jim says, when I can ID a true flight of fancy, he'll happily accept it. Okay, so I go to this debate last night, and the proposition, I didn't like the debate because the proposition was, it was very data driven. It was it was that until the data shows us that the gun control laws actually have a meaningful reduction in violent crime or something along these lines, all laws pertaining to preventing adults from gun ownership should be abolished. So what ends up happening is one of the guys is a statistician, Aaron Brown, who I've interviewed, and the other guy is a professor. And it got real data deep, and there's no way for the audience to actually check the data, to analyze it. So I didn't like that. But this woman sits down next to me, good looking woman. And, so I struck up a conversation with her. She says, so what's your take on the proposition? And I said, well, I generally would support the idea that we should abolish gun control laws. She says, why? So I'm getting ready to give a full answer. But the first part of my answer is, well, the Second Amendment. The second I say Second Amendment, she says, well, your reason's bullshit. Like, this woman just launched into a full-on argument with me. She says, it's outdated, da, 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 da. I said, okay. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, if you were arrested, would you go into court and, argue for your Fourth, Fifth Amendment rights? Or would you just say those are outdated notions? I think she knew I had her. Diana told me to go to hell. I think she knew that I was right, because she kind of, dialed down the sort of rancor, and it became a little bit more of a pleasant discussion. But it was funny because she got so angry, and Subby was sitting between us, and he told me later he was just happy that he didn't answer when she said, what do you support? Because he wouldn't have dealt with her very well. Very mean woman. But I shouldn't say that. She was initially mean, but she was subsequently nice. So Diana's upset with me a little bit because I suggested to her, in a joking way, that perhaps she was a little melodramatic about the illness that she suffered the other day from the hot sauce. So I keep hearing about it now. It's days later. It's over with. We feel better. I'm happy with life. But Diana's having a hard time letting it go. But I love you, Diana, either way.
Washington. Is that for me, Christopher? Because he loved plays. He did, actually. He did allow the officers, I think at Valley Forge, even to witness some plays, to lift up the morale. He's a great. I don't mind being him. I don't mind being Washington. I think he was the greatest president of all time, in my view. But Mason was pretty awesome, and I think a little bit more intellectual than Washington.
Yeah, James Monroe James Wilson was good. Gouverneur Morris was awesome. So listen.
Yeah, you love Gouverneur Morris.
Gouverneur, yeah. So Subby and I, we go into this gelato place yesterday, and we're morons, so we go to the wrong part. We don't go where we're supposed to go in line. So end up, we let the other people, we figured it out, and we let them go ahead of us. And they were like, no, you go. And I said, no, you go. And so I told them, listen, I said, we're just an old couple. We don't know what we're doing. Right. So Subby says, that's not true. He says, we are not old. I said, we're an old married couple. We don't know what we're doing. But it was so nice because by the time I go to get, to pay for the gelato, I got what's called an affogato. Do you know what that is?
No.
This isn't a trick question. Do you know what an affogato is?
No, it sounds awful.
Oh, it's delicious. It's gelato. It's gelato with a shot of espresso.
No, I couldn't do it.
But anyway, so we go and I get to the counter to pay, and they said, no, your bill's already taken care of. The couple that we allowed to go ahead of us, they're, teenagers, they paid for our gelato.
That's great.
It was awesome. Yeah.
How sweet. You don't see that stuff anymore.
No. And I got a text from Diana yesterday at 4:00 after I told her I was going to New York from the day, and it says I won't be. It says I won't be available till 5, but I'm hungry. I says, okay, hon, that's fine, but I'm in New York, so I don't know what to tell you. All right, let's find the answers to the questions from Monday, and well, that'll be that. And then Mark's going to do everything today.
Man,
I'll do the capitalist thought of the
day. I know. I had a question at the very beginning. It occurred to me, and now I've lost it.
So by the way, just so you know, we're up to 962 or 63 subscribers.
Nice.
Yes, we're moving on up. I take full credit. Okay.
By the way, I love James Valiant used the word groovy. I love that term, groovy. That never ever goes out of style.
No, Jim is like the most groovy dude you've ever been around.
Groovy.
Let me tell you, I got so many stories. If you ever get the opportunity to drive with Jim in his car, what an experience. It's a giant Cadillac. Great car. And Jim drives like a maniac.
Holy shit. Really?
Jim drives like a maniac. Yeah. So you're shifting around. It's a ton of fun. And Jim doesn't give a shit. He just ton of fun. Okay. Ian Gilmore saw the trailer for Disclosure Day before seeing Project Hail Mary, and it looked interesting. Then he found out that it was about aliens being revealed by the government, and he lost interest. He said, I'll probably watch it if it streams. Kira Felix says he did not watch it. He doesn't like going to the movies. The Odyssey was enough for a while. And Thomas Hag says, I didn't see it either. So you asked a question about a movie that nobody saw.
Wow. Okay. A Spielberg movie. Nobody saw the Spielberg
I don't care
movie.
who it is. You're running around asking questions. We need relevant questions. There was a lot more comments, but most of them were attacks on me. So I didn't want to
good. Oh, good. Better you than me. Exactly the way I would function in a zombie apocalypse. As they are chasing me, Michael, I throw you to them as bait while I run.
There was a hat yesterday that I wanted, but it was a $28 hat. So I wasn't going to spend $28 on a hat, but the hat said, I'm not for everybody. And I thought, man, that's the perfect hat for me.
Yeah, it's perfect. Okay, Michael, you got the capitalist thought for the day. Go ahead.
I do love the capitalist. I mean, I do love the capitalist thought of the day. Yes. But I also, I will give the capitalist thought of the day. And the capitalist thought of the day is going to be quite simple, right? It's all about happiness, folks. That's the purpose of life, is to be happy, to do the things in life that are going to sustain you, to allow you to have joy and allow you to have happiness in your life. The best, and I'm not going to say that it's necessary, but I do think that it makes it a lot more likely, right? I think the more free we are, the more likely it is we'll be happy. And the reason is because we have more opportunities to live our best lives, to go into those fields that most attract us, to produce in the way that is most conducive to our survival, to read the books that are most likely to make us happy, watch the movies, hang out with the people, speak our minds in a way. Freedom is damn near a prerequisite for happiness. I'm not going to say it's the absolute, because I'm not going to say that nobody in any socialist country could ever be happy. All I'm saying is that if we want happiness, freedom is a good place to start.
Well, we know the oligarchs and the politically connected will be happy in a socialist economy, Michael, because they'll be rich.
Since when did we start this?
The other people will be poor. What are you talking about?
This follow-up.
It's not a rebuttal. It's not a rebuttal.
No, it's a follow-up.
So what? I'm
saying, but when did this just started today? Is this going to be a new thing?
It's not going to be a new thing. It might happen tomorrow. I can't guarantee. It just depends on if the whimsy takes me. So, guys, my question for the day is: do you think that people should proceed with state prosecutions of state officials who engaged in the lockdowns? Do you think the people should do that? Yes or no? Go to YouTube to answer that question. Make sure you like and subscribe to this channel as well, and make sure you share it across social media platforms, because this message of individualism, of rational egoism, and of capitalism needs to get out there in the world, man. We need to counter the Hassan Pikers of the world. Okay, folks, so you got 23 hours to check your premises. Remember, it's what all smart people do. So why don't you do it? Start right now, please. And I'm sure you'll be a changed person by the end of the 23 hours. Peace.